Hello and welcome to Say in the City. My name is SatC, and today we are breaking down the ninth episode of season one of Sex in the City. The Turtle and the Hare was directed by the returning Michael Fields and written by our first team of writers, Nicole Averill and Sue Kolinsky. Averill will return as an executive story editor for 6 episodes of season 4. Kolinsky has written for a few series, but she's most well known for producing The Osbournes, Newlyweds Nick and Jessica, and Top Chef. Now, we open the episode on Brooke, the second guest character we open with after Elizabeth in the pilot. Carrie describes Brooke as perfect, an interior designer who only dated A-list guys, one of whom I believe is supposed to be a stand-in for the piece of shit who shall not be named. And let's be honest here, just because a guy is A-list doesn't make him attractive. But I love all of Brooke's outfits as she gets out of the various cars for dates. I feel like this sequence will inspire a few character entrances in the future, and you can definitely see its influence on The Devil Wears Prada, but we won't get into that. We learn that Brooke is getting married to a surprise suitor, which is odd because I am assuming the invitations were sent out, but we'll go with it. Carrie tells us it was the average $100,000 wedding, which is super fun. Those happen every day, right? The average wedding today costs $35,000, which is insane to me. But that tells us this is a very lavish affair. Carrie mentions that the guest list includes classmates from Steiner, Dalton, and Brown. I believe Steiner refers to the Rudolph Steiner School, a private Waldorf school on the Upper East Side. Dalton refers to the Dalton School, another private Ivy prep school on the Upper East Side. And then Brown University is a private Ivy League research university in Providence, Rhode Island. And fun fact, John F. Kennedy Jr. is a notable alumnus, and we'll talk about him here in a bit. Carrie tells us that she and the girls look like the Witches of Eastwick, which is one of my favorite movies of the 80s. It's about a group of 3 women, played by Cher, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Susan Sarandon, who find out they're witches after they accidentally summon the devil as their ideal man. And I do think Carrie's being too hard on them. Sure, the hair choices are choices, but they look great from the neck down. And this is the first time we've seen them all in black since the pilot episode. And just like before, their personalities are still shining through. We get to see Brooke's full wedding gown and veil, which is reminiscent of Princess Diana's 1981 wedding gown, sans puffy sleeves. This style was the go-to for such a long time. We saw a similar silhouette on Rachel in the pilot episode of Friends, Shelby in Steel Magnolias, and Celine Dion in 1994. We then meet the Turtle, a Manhattan legend known for 2 things, good investment and bad breath. We actually do learn that the turtle's name is Bernie Turtletaub, which is a little on the nose as far as show nicknames go, but we can infer that the girls didn't come up with this particular one. Since he's a friend of the groom, we can also infer that they went to college together, and this is where he got the nickname. Of course, considering that most college nicknames for men are disgusting, I hope it was just because of his last name, Turtletaub. The turtle is sitting and then comes out of nowhere to run up to Sam to hit on her, which she quickly dodges. When they pan out, I love how the entire table is just sitting there in silence. Like, what is Charlotte looking at? Also, pretty sure there should not be a child at this table. So we find out instantly that the turtle is interested in Samantha, but does he already know Carrie? I guess we shouldn't assume they know each other, but he gets very close to her if they don't. The white people are dancing to a big band version of That's the Way I Like It, originally made famous by Casey and the Sunshine Band. Oh, look. There are 2 black couples. Good. I was worried this crowd might be racist. Isn't diversity beautiful? Anyway, we get this very specific personality trait from the turtle where he tries to figure out what the ingredients are, which I guess could be endearing, but only if you're also a foodie. The turtle is played by Timothy Wheeler, who won the role for some shady reasons. As Darren Star shared in Kiss and Tell, when we were casting this episode, we just could not find the right turtle. When I saw the guy we cast on the set after he came out of hair and makeup, I said, he's just too cute to be the turtle. The scene was supposed to be shot in an hour, so we released him and called this other actor who had auditioned and who, for whatever reason, we hadn't hired. Thank God he was home. That was a nail biting moment. Could you imagine, though, finding out later that you were hired because you're ugly? But we'll talk about this later. Miranda, Charlotte, and Carrie all get a short one-on-one with Brooke, played by Haviland Morris, most well known for her role as Carolyn in 16 Candles. She says to Miranda, "Can you believe I finally did it?" She tells Charlotte, "You're next. Bill's got some great single friends." And we'll come back to this line later. When it's Carrie's turn, Brooke tells her, "It's always better to marry someone who loves you more than you love them." I think about this line all the time, but let's not get into it. What I will say is Brooke is so earnest and kind of sad here. Like, she's been waiting to spill this little bit of wisdom for a while. Obviously, Carrie has no idea what to do with this information, which leads to her writing it down and telling us, "People are always telling me things I don't want to hear." But this one crossed the line. We get the typing screen, but not the episode Quandary yet. And this makes sense because Carrie has no idea what to do with this information. As a journalist or sexual anthropologist, this is an occupational hazard. Only Carrie didn't actually ask, so I totally understand why she's so taken aback. She calls Big to ask him why people get married when they're not in love, and we get the When Harry Met Sally split screen. I love getting to see their two bedrooms juxtaposed like this. It tells us so much about them as a couple without really calling attention to anything in particular, but we'll get to this in later episodes. Big gives some possible reasons before revealing that he did marry for love before, but then he casually drops the news that he's never getting married again. So, quick recap, just an episode ago, we found out Big used to be married to someone Carrie gets along with and kind of admires, and not even 5 minutes into this episode, we get this bombshell. And this particular exchange is going to affect Carrie's life for the next 10 years. Luckily, Carrie reacts as well as we can expect and finally communicates her feelings. Big said it so nonchalantly that Carrie immediately thinks he's with somebody else. Like, maybe this is his way of breaking up with her. She hangs up saying, "Could I date a man who would never get married?" as she shoves a giant bite of wedding cake in her mouth. We cut to the diner from last episode, but we get a better view of it. While it's very New York, it feels a bit too New York for these women. Like, I pointed out the graffiti in the previous episode, but I do feel like they were trying to be a bit too realistic in this first season. And I'm going to be a snob again for a moment. They were just at a $100,000 wedding where they were probably all in Manolo Blahniks or Jimmy Choo's. Obviously, that doesn't mean they have to always eat in 4-star restaurants or anything, but this diner does feel like the scrunchie of the first season. Anyway, we hear Etta James's Something's Got a Hold on Me, which is hands down one of my favorite Etta James songs. It's shown up in multiple TV shows, including RuPaul's Drag Race and Private Practice, and Christina Aguilera covered it in Burlesque. When we see the girls in the booth, we see that Carrie is carrying a tote with the leather alligator clutch behind her that keeps showing up this season. Carrie's also wearing the Bulgari watch that we saw in the 3rd episode. Obviously, Carrie wants to talk about what Big said. Miranda and Samantha are big surprise, not sensitive to this at all. Charlotte, again, big surprise, is very disappointed and asks, "What if you spend 5 years with him and in the end you have nothing to show for it?" Only 5 years? Who's going to tell her? Anyway, I'm not going to go through everything they talk about here because so much of it is going to come up again in later episodes, but Samantha gives the weirdest advice and then says the meanest thing she'll probably ever say to Charlotte.
Okay. If you were 25, that would be adorable, but you're 32 now, so that's just stupid.
And I'm kind of mad at Samantha right now because she's forcing me to defend Charlotte and say that she's right. A relationship should be based on honesty and communication. And you could argue that even Miranda agrees with her since she reacted appropriately to Sam's weird-ass advice. Luckily, Miranda gives us all some hope by saying, in 50 years, men are going to be obsolete anyway. She then brings up her new vibrator, the Rabbit. We find out that Carrie is in desperate need of a battery-operated device, while Charlotte has a little monologue that she'll repeat at least one more time. A vibrator does not call you on your birthday. A vibrator doesn't send you flowers the next day, and you cannot take a vibrator home to meet your mother. Now, if Sam had said the meanest thing ever here, I'd be much more okay with it. Miranda just has to ask one question to make them all shut up, but I'm not even going to comment on Miranda's hand gesture here. Not a lesbian, my ass. Sam goes to meet a man while the other 3 go to meet the Rabbit. They take a cab to the Pleasure Chest, which is still located at 156 7th Avenue South in the West Village, and I love that they are in a real store. You can't fake this kind of interior. This is what a sex shop should look like. We have stores called Pleasures here in Colorado that are too bright for me. Like, I'm Catholic. I need my sex shop to make me feel shameful. Anyway, they find the rabbit. This is Vibratex's Rabbit Pearl. It was imported from Japan and first released in the US in 1984. After this episode, sales increased by 700%. For some reason, though, Vibratex has retired the Rabbit Pearl design, but other manufacturers still make rabbit vibrators. And fun fact, the name Rabbit was chosen because the original founder's daughter, Shay, was born in the year of the rabbit. Carrie gapes at the price of $92, which I guess is fair. That is until Miranda reminds her how much money they spend on shoes. But really, how much would you pay to guarantee an orgasm? Charlotte says, well, I have no intention of using that. I'm saving sex for someone I love. And I love that the bondage wall is behind her as she says this. Like, this is 50 Shades of York. God, I need a better reference. Baby York. Carrie opens the box to show us the toy. Charlotte has the best reaction. Look, oh, it's so cute. Oh, I thought it would be all scary and weird, but it isn't. It's pink for girls. And look, the little bunny and his cute little face, like Peter Rabbit. So in addition to being the first dual action vibrator in the US, the design of the rabbit was based on Japanese sex toys that were manufactured in bright colors and shaped to look like beavers, kangaroos, and turtles to get around the country's obscenity laws. The more you know. Before we leave the pleasure chest, Carrie's carrying a Party Pal novelty blow-up doll by Doc Johnson Enterprises. There's also the game Dirty Minds in the background, which I have. Samantha calls Carrie to tell her about her night while Carrie plays a little bit with the rabbit. We meet Jerry, who Sam met at the wedding. Jerry's played by Sebastian Roche, a Scottish-French actor who's been in quite a bit, most notably to me. He was Mikkel in The Vampire Diaries and its spin-off the originals. He was also Balthazar in Supernatural, and most recently, he was Father Renaud in the Paramount Plus original 1923. Carrie took Samantha to Lava, which I can't tell if this place was ever called Lava, but we are at 230 West 4th Street in the West Village, which is now Empeon. Jerry tells her he knew they'd have dinner together. She responds, well, aren't you cocky? And I'm pretty sure this will be the worst thing Samantha will say to many men. It seems like every time she says this, something unexpectedly terrible happens to her. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. And real quick, Jerry may be disgusting, but I love that Lava is supporting the AIDS walk. Jerry proves that he is in fact disgusting, and let's be honest, Samantha dodged a huge bullet here. Like, what do you want to bet Jerry is actually a serial killer? But really, we've been on kind of an emotional roller coaster with Samantha this season. We're going to get a similar situation next season where her reaction makes a lot more sense. But this is their first date. And I understand that we haven't seen Samantha get rejected by anyone but Big up until this point, but this reaction is not from the woman who's famous for fucking like a man. And may I just remind us of one of the first things out of her mouth in the pilot episode.
You can bang your head against the wall and try and find a relationship, or you can say screw it and just go out and have sex like a man.
At least she shakes it off pretty quickly and walks away with confidence. However, as she walks away, the turtle starts shouting her name, which causes her to turn around and almost get away. But he compliments her, so she has to stay. Again, out of character, but let's go with it. We'll actually get a line from Carrie in the next episode that'll help us unpack this. When she sits down, he leans in and asks, so, do you like this shirt? My ex-girlfriend picked it out for me. And this is apparently his pickup line. And no wonder he's eating alone. Anyway, instead of answering, Sam brings up his breath. He blames it on Chinese herbs he's taking for a longer life, and Samantha's response is perfect. Well, with breath like that, you're going to live a very long life alone. And this is why we love Samantha. I also love her reaction to his joke. It's like, oh, you're incorrigible. We come back to Carrie and Sam on the phone. Samantha tells her she's going to fix him up because why? Because he complimented her? Let's continue to go with it. So she says, honey, when I'm through with him, he'll be Gracie Mansion. Gracie Mansion is the official residence of the mayor of New York City. It was built in 1979. Luckily, Carrie is also perplexed by Sam's decision. This brings us to the quandary of the episode. In a city of great expectations, is it time to settle for what you can get? And now that I think about it, this episode is pretty depressing. but I appreciate that Carrie is at home in her pajamas with no bra on. Like, amen. Anyway, Carrie decides to go to the source of her angst and goes with Brooke to return wedding gifts. They're returning these candles that truly are pretty ugly. Good thing Brooke hasn't seen Samantha's pillow shams. But I love how there's a matching set on display right behind her and that she blames his friends. I'm also fascinated by people who get gifts outside of a registry. Honestly though, I'm a bad gift giver. If you don't tell me what you want, you're either getting booze, a gift card, or nothing at all. Carrie asks Brooke how married life is treating her, and Brooke has such a New York response, which I'll talk about here soon.
Oh, it's fabulous. I feel like an enormous weight has been lifted.
And that's a good thing.
What's that supposed to mean?
And we see the facade crack a bit here, but this is what happens when you hang out with a friend and already have an agenda. But then Carrie says,
Oh, it just just means I meant you're happy with Alan, right?
okay, who's Alan? I had to triple check, but Brooke definitely told Charlotte that Bill's got some great single friends. So no wonder she's asking since they don't even know the man's name. Brooke assures us she's happy, but I would also be unsure if I were Carrie. Like, hey, remember that batshit crazy thing you said to me at your wedding? You sure you're okay, girl? Carrie is carrying the tote again, and while I appreciate the realness of the tote bag, like that is definitely a writer in a big city going around and meeting people to run errands and shit, I'm glad it didn't really go much further than this. By the way, the tote bag is a WNET or 13 tote bag, which means Carrie supports her local PBS station. She's also picked up a copy of the New York Times, and I love this coat that Carrie's wearing. This is a timeless piece right here. Brooke looks perfect in this brown turtleneck and tan overcoat ensemble. Like, this bitch is classy as fuck. But her appearance in the show just raises more questions for me. Like, how does Carrie know her? And how do all of the girls know her? Keep in mind, she's the first character that we know for sure all of the women know and are friends with. So far, we've only seen Stanford interact with Samantha. Miranda knew who Mike was, and obviously Skipper, but we never saw Skipper interact with Sam or Charlotte. But how all of the girls know Brooke and whether it makes sense to the series isn't really important right now. It'll be a more significant plot point later on. As they leave, Carrie tries to convince Brooke that she's buying what Brooke is selling, and Brooke says to her, look, we all think we're Carolyn Bessette. One day, John's out of the picture, and we're happy just to have some guy who can throw around a frisbee. So we've briefly talked about Carolyn Bessette before, but she is a fashion icon who became an instant celebrity when she married John F. Kennedy Jr., also known as John John. He was the hottest bachelor in the 90s, even being a major plot point on Seinfeld. They got married in 1996 and were the it couple until their fatal plane crash in 1999, which also took the life of Carolyn's older sister Lauren, continuing the Kennedy curse. But they've both continued to impact popular culture to this day, specifically in terms of fashion and politics, since John was an attorney and publisher. Before Carrie can respond, Brooke sees Samantha and the turtle and calls them over. As they cross the street, we can see that they've been doing some shopping, just as Sam promised. Sam is carrying a Gucci bag, and it looks like the turtle could be carrying 2 Helmut Lang bags, and Carrie acknowledges that he's also wearing Helmut Lang, and there is something just really chic about the turtleneck overcoat combo. But let's face it, they had to put the turtle in a turtleneck. I couldn't find this specific overcoat with the stripes at the bottom, but the whole thing does feel very Helmut Lang. I love Helmut Lang, and I'm pretty sure we'll see Carrie in some of his clothes later on in the series, but to me, he's one of the few American designers who can pull off minimalism without getting boring or monotonous. Also, holy shit, I'm obsessed with Samantha's coat. Sam tells them she's taking him to Bliss for a facial. Bliss refers to Bliss Spa, which has been in Soho since 1996. It was definitely very popular during this time. And it looks like they're on Spring Street and Wooster Street. There's a Chanel getting renovated there now, but the window says Portico, New York, which has to have a fascinating history because there is a Portico, New York furniture store in India, but the only Portico, New York left in the States is a fine art firm. But it makes sense that they ran into them in this area since Bliss is just a short walk, even if they went the wrong way. Also, there is still a ton of shopping in this area, but I think the only thing still there after all these years is that graffiti behind them. Also, there's a random 6 degrees of separation moment connected to the street that I'll get into shortly. Carrie tells us Samantha left with the turtle, Brooke left with a better gift, and I left wondering if everyone in Manhattan was settling. So with this line, I feel like this could have been an excellent moment to have those interviews. Yes, even though I hate them. Like right now, Brooke and Samantha are the only ones we know of who are settling for their relationship. So it could have strengthened Carrie's quandary to have more stories of people in happy but one-sided marriages. We cut to Carrie and Charlotte doing yoga as Carrie tells us, "My Zen teacher once told me that there is nothing like yoga to quiet a busy mind." And when the hell did Carrie have a Zen teacher? Like, is Carrie actually a Buddhist? Is this her way of telling us? And just as Carrie had reached the moment of no thought,
I think I broke my vagina. Oh, sorry, my ponytail.
okay, if there was ever a moment I fell in love with Kristen Davis, this is it. The whisper, the facial expression, it's all so perfect, as is Carrie's immediate reaction to stop pulling. Charlotte tells Carrie that she just found out that sex with a man is horrible. It only took her 32 years, but okay. She says, well, it's weird because with the rabbit, it's like every time, boom. And one time I came for like 5 minutes. Carrie tells her it's not illegal, and Charlotte says,
Yeah, but no man ever did that.
and no man ever will, honey. To be fair though, this can be traumatizing, especially if you still have faith in men to satisfy you. That's all I'm going to say about this scene for now, since we will talk about orgasms again, and because it's not a surprise considering everything we know about Char so far. Charlotte says she's never touching the rabbit again, and then immediately lies to cancel her plans with Carrie that night. Okay, I love that Carrie's knees are so bent. Like, is she even stretching? Charlotte can't even look at her. I love how Carrie always puts in the exact amount of effort that I do in the gym. Bare minimum. Obviously, Carrie knows Charlotte is lying so that she can go home and play rabbit hole, so she tells us, Charlotte can never tell a decent lie. I knew an addict when I saw one. You know what was missing from this show? Cocaine. Anyway, Carrie takes Stanford to the ballet in lieu of Charlotte. As they walk out, we get this wonderful view of Lincoln Center, and this scene actually has a fun story behind it. Willie Garson said, in the scene where Stanford and Carrie are supposed to be leaving the ballet at Lincoln Center, we couldn't hire that many extras. So we waited till 10 o'clock when they had a play, the ballet, and an opera letting out at once. We had one chance to get this shot, and we did. We were walking and talking, and there are literally 10,000 people exiting Lincoln Center behind us. And this does explain why we don't see anyone's face and why that driver is probably staring directly at the camera. And we'll also get a more intimate Lincoln Center scene in a much later episode. The two besties walk across the street where Carrie points out a gay couple. This prompts Stanford to tell her that he's over the gay scene and to also tell her the story of his failed personal ad. Danny's personal ad reads, witty, successful, Ed Harris type, seeks similar with sense of humor. So no spoilers, but Ed Harris type will come back in a later season. But this is the perfect time to bring up the random street connection from earlier. So also in 1998, Ed Harris starred in the movie Stepmom with Julia Roberts and Susan Sarandon, another connection to earlier. In that movie, his character shared a loft with Roberts' character, and that loft is above the furniture store that Carrie and Brooke were in earlier. We even see the street in a scene with Sarandon and her character's children, one of whom is played by Jenna Malone, which has nothing to do with anything. I just like her. Anyway, if you want to ugly cry for an hour, watch Stepmom. Okay, back to the Stanny. The ad below his says, gay white male seeks friend to hang out with and progress into relationship. And I would answer just to tell them they misspelled relationship. And that's probably why I'm single. We get to Stanny waiting for the only person who responded. When the guy is walking up, we can see an awning that says 96 Fifth Avenue, and we can also see a Citibank across the street. So this is right down the street from where the bus ad scene was filmed for Secret Sex, which means I'm guessing they filmed this that same day since it's all rainy. Also, why wouldn't you meet at a coffee shop or something? So this fuckwad walks up and says, sorry, this is not going to happen. And poor Stanny just looks adorable here. So fuck that guy. But something similar happens in the book. I'll talk about the chapter setup and everything in a moment, but in it, Stanford is on the internet instead of the classifieds. He meets the guy with the alias Hercules. Hercules says, I check out every guy who comes through Aspen. Then I take my pick. And you don't make the cut. Well, at least I know how to pick my plastic surgeon, Stanford says calmly. It's such a shame when people remember your plastic surgery and not you. And I wish they gave him some kind of snarky response here. But like I said, Stanford is a pretty pathetic character when you really think about it. He tells Carrie, it's so brutal out there. Even guys like me don't want guys like me. I just don't have that gay look. And she says, I don't know, you look pretty gay to me. And especially in that shirt, Carrie is obviously in her Fendi trench coat for the 80th 50th time this season. Since he's dealing with so much rejection, Stanford suggests that he and Carrie get married so he can collect his inheritance from his grandmother. Carrie asks if the grandmother knows he's gay, and he says she doesn't believe in gay. Carrie immediately responds, "Oh really? That's funny. Big doesn't believe in marriage." And okay, I know there's that meme going around about Carrie making everything about her and Big, and I guess we have proof that it's accurate. Anyway, this whole proposal thing happens in the book in chapter 24, Aspen. Instead of Carrie, it's his childhood friend, Susanna Martin. After River Wild's party, he had told Susanna, "I want to turn over a new leaf. We're such good friends, we should really think about getting married. That way I can get my inheritance, and with your money and my money combined, we can live the way we've always wanted." Susanna was a 41-year-old sculptress who wore dramatic makeup and large pieces of jewelry. She had never seen herself in a traditional marriage anyway. "Separate bedrooms?" she asked. "Naturally," Stanford said. Now, we never get a resolution to this proposal in the book. We do get one slightly domestic scene while they're still in Aspen, where they seemingly solidify their plans to get married. But then this is immediately followed by Stanford slipping out of the house to meet Hercules. These two, however, do consider it, and we'll come back to that shortly. Carrie says, "Friday night at the ballet with a man who shared my passion for hot men in tights. Saturday afternoon in bed with a man who shared my passion for passion. Maybe there was such a thing as having it all." This brings us to her in bed with Big. Carrie tells him about the proposal from Stanford, and Big says, "I thought he was gay." So Big and Stanford actually know each other quite well in the book, but I think they only ever actually meet once in the entire series. By the way, smoking in bed is so gross. Like, granted, smoking indoors in general is gross, but right over your sheets? Later that night, we catch up with Carrie, getting ready to go out with Miranda and Charlotte when Charlotte calls. When Carrie goes to answer, we get more teasing of the contents of her closet. Charlotte tells her she's too wiped out to go out, to which Carrie tells us, "Wiped out." That was Charlotte speak for "I'm spending the night with my vibrator." And when we see Charlotte in her bedroom, like, who is this person? She has Cool Ranch Doritos and Fritos and a Diet Pepsi on her nightstand. I guess at least she's eating and keeping up her strength. Miranda and Carrie rush to Charlotte's for a rabbit intervention. By the way, this is the door Tommy apparently came out of when he had sex with Samantha in episode 3, so this apartment is magic. At least that bookshelf is still there, making me jealous. Miranda goes to open the window, and I can't even imagine.
"It smells like Thai food in here. Have you guys been fucking?"
By the way, why is it daylight out? Anyway, Carrie goes for the rabbit while Charlotte yells, "Hey, hey, hey, it's a vibrator. It's not like it's crack." And is it weird that I said that exact thing like 3 times in my life? Carrie finds it behind a stuffed rabbit, which we actually caught a glimpse of when Charlotte was on the phone. And yes, that's the same rabbit we saw all the way back in episode 4. Anyway, Carrie grabs it with her bare hands, so I really hope Charlotte was cleaning it regularly. It's made of some good materials, but you should still clean your toys. Also, Carrie's top may actually be Helmut Lang. Either way, I love it, and those are Prada pants. At least she's finally in a new jacket as well. I'm also pretty sure this is the same jacket Miranda's going to wear next episode. The intervention is successful, and Charlotte realizes the error of her ways. Carrie tells us, with a little help from her friends, Charlotte decided that she wasn't going to settle for herself. And that's a terrible message for the youth, like, love yourself first, kids. This brings us to Sam and the turtle back at Lava. Samantha realizes that the turtle's personality makes him unfuckable. It was then that Samantha realized that even with all her effort, he was still just the turtle in black. And I wonder if this is a totally unnecessary reference to the 1997 film Men in Black. Like, I doubt it, but I wouldn't put it past them since these women loved 98's Godzilla. Also, I love the way that she looks at him here. Anyway, Sam finally just walks away. And I have to wonder, what was her endgame here? Was she planning to marry him? Part of me doubts they slept together, but the timeline of this episode is crazy since Brooke went on her honeymoon before Carrie ran errands with her. But this does remind me of a chapter in the book that we're going to talk about again soon, chapter 18, How to Marry a Man in Manhattan My Way. The chapter actually starts with a marriage announcement of a character named Cindy Ryan and the shock of the marriage, but she's nothing like Brooke. Anyway, there's a section of the chapter called Dweebs, Nerds, and Losers, where we meet Britta, a photo rep. She's talking to Bushnell when we get, "For these women, age is an advantage. If a woman has survived single in New York until her mid to late 30s, chances are she knows a thing or two about how to get what she wants. So when one of these New York women targets a man as a potential husband, there is usually very little he can do to get away. You have to start the training from day one," said Britta. "I didn't know that I wanted to marry my husband at the beginning. I only knew that I wanted him, and I would do whatever it took to get him. and I knew I would. You can't be like these stupid girls who only want to marry rich guys, she continued. You have to be a bit calculating. Take Barry, her husband. As much as he hated it, he didn't want a typical girl who would let him do whatever he wanted. If someone got him now, they'd be so lucky. He's smart, sweet, he cooks and cleans, and you know what? He hated it every step of the way. I have so many questions and unresolved issues about this relationship that I won't get into, but I wonder why the turtle had to be unattractive if his personality was going to be the nail in the coffin. Like, we've all been with very attractive people who turn us off with their terrible personalities. I think I'll just chalk this up to having a male showrunner. Like, no way a woman would throw away a guy just because he's fucking annoying. He gotta be ugly. That brings us to Carrie and Stanford meeting his grandmother. She's wearing a Coco Chanel original, and I'm obsessed. She says the suit never goes out of style, and Carrie and I both agree wholeheartedly. But I'm going to say it, this woman has insane taste in art. Like, I thought I overstuffed my walls. Anyway, Carrie is wearing a suit as well. That's interesting. She gets up to look at the old family photos, and Stanford says, doesn't she look exactly like Deborah Carr in An Affair to Remember? Now, Deborah Carr played Terry McKay in the classic 1957 film about a couple that falls in love on a transatlantic luxury liner to New York and agrees to meet at the top of the Empire State Building in 6 months' time. This movie has been referenced so many times, most memorably in the 1993 film Sleepless in Seattle. Also, Deborah Carr was famously nominated for 6 Oscars but never won, though she would receive an honorary Oscar in 1994. And this particular tale has been expertly analyzed by Be Kind Rewind. While Carrie's looking at the photos, she tells us, as I looked around at all the memorabilia and family photographs, the faces of brides and grooms, children and grandchildren, I realized. And she tells Stanford's grandmother that she wants a family. Stanford is surprised by this, and we should all be. But this does set us up perfectly for the next episode, so I'm not going to say anything else. When she's alone with Carrie, his grandmother says, I love my Stanford. He's a very sweet boy, but you know, he is a fruit. Like, damn, Grandma. At least she didn't say fag. Carrie tells us, I realized then that the only inheritance Stanford was going to get from his grandmother was her collection of Chanel suits. And I take it. I have jewelry and crystal from my abuela, and that's all I could ever ask for. We find Carrie in Big's kitchen while he cooks, which is very cozy and intimate. She tells him she does want to get married, which catches him off guard. Again, has it been weeks since he first said he never wants to get married again? Anyway, Big's initial response kind of indicates to us why they keep not having these conversations. Like, I get it though. They're still in their early stages, so why bring up marriage and kids and divorces? But then he says, I thought we were having fun. Were we, Big? Were we? I'm not going to comment further until we get further in the season, but I do want to point out a small section of the book where Carrie similarly confronts Big about marriage in chapter 18 section titled, I Should Leave. I can't take it, Carrie thinks, waking up one morning. She lies there watching Mr. Big until he opens his eyes. Instead of kissing her, he gets up to go to the bathroom. That's it, she thinks. When he comes back to bed, she says, listen, I've been thinking. Yeah, says Mr. Big. If you're not totally in love with me and crazy about me, and if you don't think I'm the most beautiful woman you've ever seen in your life, then I think I should leave. Uh-huh, says Mr. Big. Really, it's no problem. Okay, Mr. Big says somewhat cautiously. So, is that what you want? Is that what you want? Says Mr. Big. No, not really, but I do want to be with someone who's in love with me, says Carrie. Well, I just can't make any guarantees right now, but if I were you, I'd hang around, see what happens. Carrie lies back against the pillows. It's Sunday. It would be sort of a drag to have to go. What would she do with the rest of the day? Okay, she says, but just for now. I don't have forever, you know. I'm probably going to die soon, like in 15 years or something. She lights up a cigarette. Okay, says Mr. Big, but in the meantime, could you make me some coffee? Please. We end the episode with Carrie telling us, my Zen teacher also said the only way to true happiness is to live in the moment and not worry about the future. Of course, he died penniless and single. So to wrap things up, this episode gives us the perfect lead up to the final episodes of the season. As much as Big's non-response bugs me, it does feel like we're actually building up to something, which really can't be said for the previous episodes of the season. Like, I could argue that the only other episode that hinted at anything exciting coming is the pilot episode. Of Of course, I can't very well ignore the elephant in the room, the sudden spotlight on marriage coming from Carrie and implicitly Samantha. While it's too early in the show to fully unpack how each character feels about marriage, I do appreciate that they're at least acknowledging this constant struggle with commitment that people inevitably face while in a relationship. And again, Big's aversion to marriage will come up time and time again. It's one of the defining attributes of him as a character. Beyond that though, Brooke is another character I sort of wish we got to meet again. Like in 3 years when her marriage has obviously ended in divorce and now she's running around the city just having fun. But that brings us to our BIPOC character count, which is still at 2, but that is the full breakdown of the 9th episode of Sex and the City, The Turtle and the Hare. Please like the video if you enjoyed it and be sure to subscribe to the channel. And I will see you next time.